Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Jesse Peak. Before we bring him on, a couple of announcements. March 11th, 12th, and 13th. This week, we've got Forbidden Knowledge NewsCon. We're going to have 9 presenters, and you can find out more information about mine and all the presentations using that link in the description or visit our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. The conference is going to be online with a Rokfin premium membership. That's only $10. All you have to do is sign up through the link in the description or go to rokfin.com/FKN Plus. Get access to the conference and all our premium content and all the content from every creator on Rokfin. Our new free episodes are always available on Rokfin as well as Odysee and all podcast platforms. Our website is forbiddenknowledge.news. This is also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. This is where we feature other podcasts from our amazing community. And be sure and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All those links are right there in the description. Today I want to welcome Jesse Peak. He is an ex-Army National Guard and has been with MUFON since 2019, investigating cases on the side. He also works for MUFON's ERT Experiencer Resource Team, in which he helps experiencers work through their encounter. He has investigated dozens of cases, some being very interesting and some being easily explained. He also investigates for the SCU, Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, and he is also the director of Project BATTECH 404, which is investigating electrical malfunctions associated with UFO encounters. Jesse, welcome. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing excellent, man. It's great to have you on. You know, of course, this is one of my favorite topics. It's one of the things that got me started doing this. And I have to say, you know, the more I learn about it, the less I know. It has so many layers. It's like an onion that could never be peeled. You can't get to the center. But, you know, I think I know a little bit more about it when I started, although I can say that the phenomenon is definitely something that I don't think anyone has a true grip on. But that's why I love having people like yourself. I love having as many different perspectives so that, you know, myself and the audience can put this together and maybe form an opinion for themselves about what's really going on here. But you've had a very interesting background. You've been doing this for a while. So let's start there. How did you get involved with MUFON? And how did you get interested in UFOs?
So, I mean, I've always been, you know, interested in, you know, life outside the planet, life that we don't know of yet, you know, not found scientifically, you know, not in the books that we learned in school. I worked at a Boy Scout camp because I was in the Boy Scouts when I was younger, and I worked as a counselor for about 5 years up there in the Mount Poconos. So we're high up in the mountains. You can always see the sky beautifully up there, every star constellation, and we did classes like space exploration and rocketry and all that kind of good stuff up there. So when you're up there, I mean, everything looks so surreal. And you just look up there and you wonder, I mean, are we really alone in this big universe, you know? So I started probably within the past 10 years, I started really, you know, looking into my history of UFOs, reading all the documentaries and the books and all the getting really informed about the whole subject and the background. And then I came across MUFON and I was like, wow, this is a great opportunity to actually get boots on the ground, investigations done, and actually learn more about the phenomenon than what I really know. And I've kind of always been in service my whole life. I was in the military, Eagle Scout, giving back, and it's all about service. So MUFON was right up my alley with that. And then I joined MUFON's ERT team as well, which is the Experiencer Resource Team. So it was just basically just like everybody else, I just wanted to know the truth. And once I started digging in and learning the history, I was like, there's something to this. And then, like you said, the more you kind of peel that onion back, the more questions you wind up having. And I've got tons of them. So I, you know, jumped in feet first and taking advantage of every possibility I can in the field and going forward with it. So, yeah.
Right on. Now, before you started investigating for MUFON, had you ever had any personal experiences or you know, seen a UFO or anything like that?
I've seen lights in the sky. but I didn't know, if it was definitely a UFO or not. But the year I was training to become a MUFON field investigator is when I actually had my first real sighting, which we have yet to being able to figure out. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, very busy city. We have the Philadelphia International Airport and the Northeast Airport. We're right in between both of them. So we constantly see aircraft flying over the city. I was in the military. I'm very familiar with aircraft that are in our skies, drones. MUFON makes you take classes for drones and, everything that's in the sky, natural weather phenomenon, all that. So we're real familiar with it. And my dad and I were driving down in Main City in Philadelphia. And he pointed out and he said, what's that? And I looked up and there was 4 gold objects lying in a 2 and 2 formation right behind each other. And they were gold and, silent, no sound whatsoever. And then they, from the 2 and 2, they went into a single formation. I mean, just like that, and no aircraft can just do that like that. And he had never seen nothing like that his whole life. He's 60 something years old. I just turned 30. And nowhere in the military or anywhere I've ever seen something like that. So I tried to get my phone out and take a photo. I wanted to record it and have evidence of this.
That usually never works out.
No, it was a brand new phone too. I pulled it out. It malfunctioned and it would not turn on for me to take the video. And we were driving along with them at that point and we hit a light. So we had to stop and then they continued to go on. And then as they got farther away, my phone kicked on and it actually opened up and I went to go take a photo. And before I did that, the first and second one had disappeared just like that. They didn't zoom off. They didn't, go fly away in a different direction. They were just gone. And I wound up getting a still photo of the last object and the second to last right as it was disappearing. And some video, you can hear me playing with the phone. Oh, they're gone. I'm not going to get it. You know what I mean? It was crazy. And then I started coming across cases that people were having technical malfunctions with UFO sightings. So I started a project in October called Project BAT-TECH 404, and it stands for Battery Technology, and 404 is a normal error code that you get with tech. And I put a team together. We put a database together, and we've been researching since October cases that have to deal with these technical difficult effects.
Yeah, that's one of the things I want to get into. First, I've always been interested in MUFON investigators and what, you mentioned training earlier. What kind of training does a MUFON investigator have to go through? Can you give us maybe a little synopsis?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually, first step, you have to go ahead and buy one of these manuals, these field manuals. They're pretty thick, a lot of information in it. They want you to be completely familiar with, everything you're going to have to do. Natural weather phenomenon, procedures of going out in the field, taking all kinds of stuff. So you gotta learn the manual inside and out. And then MUFON has their own university online. So you go on there and you'll take the field investigator certification exam, and you have to get an 80 or higher to pass that exam. Once you pass that and you move forward, you then have to take 3 one-hour courses with our director of investigations. And during those 3 weeks, you have to take 4 different certification classes within those 3 weeks. Once you complete all of that, then you are a field investigator trainee, and you start doing cases with your state section director or other field investigators that are senior to you. This way they can help you along, teach you the ropes, and get you familiar. And once you do about, a couple cases and they feel you're ready, then you can start doing your own investigations for yourself. And I was very shocked at how extensive the training was. I did not expect it to be that hard and that drawn out. But it's a good thing to have that knowledge, because then you really know what you're doing when you get a case.
Yeah. Now, like I said in earlier, whenever we first started speaking, that I have a completely different understanding of this phenomenon than when I first started looking at it. I was definitely more of a nuts and bolts type of person when it came to investigating this stuff and researching it. And it has evolved great. I think it's more of a consciousness connection type of spiritual phenomenon now, but there is definitely a physical aspect to it. There's definitely plenty of things that I have no idea how it's possible or how to explain it, but my understanding has changed greatly. I'm wondering, in the MUFON training, do they, I guess you could say, do they update their training guides to the new understandings collectively that has been gotten about UFOs and the phenomenon, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. The one I have here is the 6th edition. So this is the newest of 6 editions they put out. So every couple of years, they'll update it to exactly what's prevalent and what's going on in the field. This way we have that knowledge, because it does change, like you're saying. Every couple of years, different things pop up. We learn new things. So that, yes, it does get put into the book, and we always put a new one out every couple of years to update that. So yeah, absolutely.
Now, does MUFON have a kind of overall view about the phenomenon? Do they think that, these are indeed beings coming from different planets? Do they account for interdimensional possibilities? Anything like that?
So, like I said earlier, I work for the ERT of MUFON. I'm a field investigator and I'm an ERT member. So it stands for Experiencer Resource Team, and we help experiencers that have, abduction phenomenon, contactees, people that have been visited, etc. And we work with them one-on-one as a counselor. We help them through the process. So I think MUFON overall, the field investigator is kind of more nuts and bolts, but the ERT team is kind of more into, the abduction phenomenon and all that. So there are different levels to MUFON, I would say. And I do think that they're open-minded to all the possibilities that it could be. A lot of times we're hearing dimensionals or interdimensionals, or species from, that aren't even able to be seen only on different frequencies. So, I mean, it could be all those different possibilities. And there's plenty of people in MUFON that believe in all of them. So I think they're pretty open-minded when it comes to that.
Right on. That's good to hear, because I know that, especially in the past, I've heard from different people that have been associated with MUFON that it's, strictly nuts and bolts, but that was a long time ago. I'm sure that a lot of this stuff has changed and evolved.
Yes. Yep.
So could you maybe talk about some of the most profound investigations you've been involved with, if you can?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do cases on the side too. I belong to a couple different organizations, but I prefer mainly work with MUFON. But I've done some cases on the side that have blown me away. I also run a podcast, so I have different people come on, and I've had a couple people come on to tell their story for the first time ever, and then investigate it kind of on the side and help them through it. And I had this one gentleman. His name was Michael Gilbert. And he was, he's about 60 years old, came to me and messaged me saying, hey, I'd like to finally tell my story. Never told it before. And, and that right away, somebody 60 years old telling their story that happened back in 1989, that's intriguing immediately. So when he told me about it, he said he was driving down a road one night. He was playing video games at his friend of his, and he's driving down this road. He always drives down. It's a busy, hot little road, constantly cars going up and down. And as he got farther down the road towards where the schoolhouse was that his child had went to school, he seen some kind of craft hovering above the school, right behind it though. So he pulled over the car and he rolled down the window and he's listening, but he can't hear anything at all. And he's like, this is weird. So he continued down the road and pulled over at the school. And when he stopped, he realized that this craft wasn't giving off no sound whatsoever, but it was a circular craft, just hovering there with a light shining down into the woods, or what he thought was the woods, but it wound up being a pasture. So he turned his car off and just sat there, couldn't hear nothing. That weirded him out. So he got out of the car, and when he got out of the car, he said he could feel like electricity in the air. Real silent. You couldn't hear no bugs or anything chirping, but he had this like magnetic feeling. And when he looked over to go see where this was coming down, he realized it was a pasture, and there was a fence blocking that pasture. Now he said normally you could look through that fence and you could see into the pasture, but whatever was happening, he said it was completely blocked and you couldn't see through it. And as he stood there for a couple of minutes, this craft's light automatically went up and then started slowly moving down the road. Now he hopped back in the car and he drove down and followed this thing. And as he got farther down the road, it started to veer off to where he couldn't follow anymore. And when it made this right-hand turn and continued off, it transformed, he said, from a circular craft into a cigar-shaped craft, and then went and just disappeared, exactly like that. So later on, he realized, he had just left from his friend's house. He wound up having an hour of missing time. So from the time that he pulled over and got out of the vehicle, he thought it was like 10, 15 minutes, the whole thing, but it wound up being over an hour that he was gone for, so he still doesn't know what that's about. And we tried to help him work through that. He's still kind of figuring out if he wants to do hypnotherapy and see if maybe he can figure that out, but he doesn't know if he wants to go down that route yet. But it's extremely interesting, those kind of cases that you get like that are that detailed, and when you get a couple of them, it kind of correlates and you get a better understanding of what's happening. But that had me blown, the way that you don't hear crafts transform too often. There's very few cases that are like that. And for something to do that, it just tells you how advanced these crafts are, or whatever these beings may be. So yeah,
it makes me wonder if it's obviously something extremely advanced, but is it that the craft itself is changing, or do they have the ability to mess with our perception to where we see something different? That's always something, because there's always such strange instances that seem to be like screen memories, where people will say they saw an owl or a deer, but then when they go get regressed, it turns into like a gray alien or something. So It's very interesting how that stuff can occur.
Yep. And I had just heard something recently about cats, that a lot of these encounters, they see cats and when they're seeing these, and then they do the hypnotherapy, like you said, and it winds up being an ET, just like the owl thing. They said a lot of owls happen like that. So it's really interesting when you start looking down those rabbit holes and seeing cases that correlate with each other again and again, where you're seeing different animals, but really when you find out you were with an ET and having a contact. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, it is. Now, before we move on from any of your cases that we were talking about, is there any others that really stick out in your mind that you'd like to discuss?
So I got one that I got with the project. A gentleman reported he was driving his truck as well on his way home, about to go see his girlfriend. He was on the phone, hung up the phone. And as he was driving, he sees a craft at the left side. So he pulls over and he's watching this thing come towards him. And then it stops and sits there and hovers for a minute. So immediately the first thing he thinks, well, my girlfriend's right down the road. I'm going to call her and see if she can see this craft and make sure I'm not just seeing a hallucination or something. So he goes to call her, but the phone is dead after he had hung up. The phone won't even turn on whatsoever. So immediately he looks to look at his stereo system in the car, and he has Sirius XM radio, and on there it said no signal. Which was really weird to him, because he always had signal in this area. But whatever this craft was seemed to be affecting all of his electronics that were around him. Once the craft started moving off in a different direction, the Sirius XM radio popped back on. And when he got back at the house, he had to actually physically take the battery out of the phone and put it back in for the phone to even work. So that was really interesting as well. And one of the big parts of this project that we're doing, we're trying to figure out what frequencies they're using to affect our technology. And we're actually got some scientists on board now. And we're also working with AI and getting ready to get to the test phase where we can actually figure these things out. So it's extremely interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How did you get started with this project, and what's involved with it? I mean, you said you have scientists that are using AI. Maybe getting a little bit more details about that.
Yeah. So my sighting with the cell phone kind of stemmed off of this whole project. And when I started investigating other cases through MUFON and on the side, I would see this again and again, people's cell phones malfunctioning, not working when a craft is in the vicinity. But then I always realized, as they got out of the vicinity, they tend to work again and such. So I was like, this would be great. I haven't really heard anybody looking into this stuff before. Let's start a project. Let's put a team together and let's research it. So I recruited a team, I put them together, and we created a whole database, and we started the project October, I think, 1st, and we put it out there for people that can report. And we're also documenting old cases from back in the day. This way we have all the data we can possibly have, correlate all the stuff that's similar to each other. And once we got to that point, we started getting a lot of cases in. I decided that it was time to, start the scientific method and beginning asking questions and finding the answers to these questions. Some of those things are, what range do these craft have to be in to affect our technology? What kind of frequencies are they using? Are they using a low frequency or a high frequency? Is there a possibility that we can prevent these encounters or effects from happening before they even occur? So once we figured out all the questions that we wanted to answer, we started putting data together. And I'm also a member of the SCU as well. And I was on there, just promoting the project. And I had a couple people hop on board. And they have immaculate backgrounds. Some of them are still anonymous. They don't want to come out to the public, but they are helping with the project. People that have worked in space industry, aerospace, all that kind of stuff. And they've been helping us along with, we found an AI system that we can use and get answers and kind of, put the hard data into the AI system and kind of get our answers that we're looking for when we put together, different ranges and stuff like that and frequencies. So
Go ahead.
So what we did is we're now figuring out ways that we can actually do physical tests with this stuff. We're gonna invest in some things that we can use to actually generate and replicate a frequency coming from a UFO with the low frequencies, high frequencies, and then we're going to test different normal everyday technology like cell phones, cameras. We'll even test it with a vehicle at one point, and then we'll make our notes and go from there, because we need to have that information. And then based off of that information, we can actually make something. I mean, NASA does it when they're re-entering orbit. They have them heat shields that protects them from heat. So there's obviously something we can do to protect our technology from these frequencies. So we're also looking into how we can do that, which is really interesting. And we came across some files that were sent to us about diesel engines before 1974. We've had cases where a combustion engine and a diesel engine were side by side, and a UFO would pop up and the combustion engine would fail and the diesel engine wouldn't. It wasn't affected at all by these frequencies. So what I went and I looked, I said, what happened after 1974 that they were beginning to be affected? And we actually found out that the first important U.S. federal emission standards were put in place in 1974 for these diesel engines. So changes were made to the engines that allowed it to be affected after 1974, but before that, they weren't. So we're now looking into what the engine was built out of to figure out why it wasn't being affected. And that can be implemented into building some kind of protection shield or something like that to stop our technology from being affected. So it's interesting. It's a lot to it. And we're trying to get to the bottom of it. And it's a public project. So you can go on our website. You can go on and see the cases that we've researched and investigated. And we'll also be putting updates on there as much as we get information. So it's great.
Yeah, it is. It's great. And it makes me wonder what kind of information you could come up with, especially seeing that these things have been known in the past to be able to shut down nuclear facilities. So, they obviously have some heavy duty technology that they're working with. Now, what about this whole subject makes me think of how people who have reported UFOs sometimes have paranormal activity that kind of follow it. And I'm just wondering, maybe it's this powerful electromagnetic fields or whatever's coming off of these UFOs. Maybe it's being mistaken for paranormal activity, or maybe it's, the electromagnetic field is strong enough to open up some kind of portal or something. But it is interesting, the connections between this kind of electromagnetic energy and the unexplained things that occur after a UFO sighting, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the theories that I've also been paying attention to, UFO sites, landing sites, stuff like that, and seeing what has been found at these sites after the sighting. We've come up with a couple different things like sulfur has been found, radioactivity, organic carbide, things like that. Also chemicals that were used by NASA to protect against the heat shuttles for reentry. We found at these crash sites. So we're trying to put together and maybe find out what it's leaving behind to cause these effects like this and open portals and so on. So yeah, it's something we have to look into for sure.
Since you started investigating this and actually interviewing people and working with people, do you found that there's a more openness to discuss this stuff, ever since maybe we've heard the media, mainstream media, start talking about UFOs more, and the Pentagon forming UAP teams and all this crazy stuff? Or do you think it's just a natural thing that people are becoming more curious? It's probably a combination, right?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a combination. I was just talking with my assistant director the other day, and we were talking about how, the younger generation is starting to come up now. They're very curious. They want to know what's going on. I'm part of that younger generation that's in the field. I'm only 30 years old. And we have questions. We're interested in stuff, even the ones that are getting into politics, even the ones that are becoming doctors today. The field of ufology is very vast, so we need doctors, we need people in politics, we need all that to get disclosure in ufology. So, and they're interested, they want to ask these questions, and now questions are being brought up in government by Senator Gillibrand and Marco Rubio, who made who put this the June 25th report out on UAP. So we're starting to see that stuff all the time, and people also are curious. And COVID was happening at that same time, so everybody was staying home and watching TV. And all this was on the mainstream media. Tucker Carlson tonight had it on. The New York Times. I mean, tons of people. So they were viewing it, and then that was causing them to get interested. And then the younger generations in the UFOs. So it's all of it put together. And really, that June 25th UAP report in Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon coming out with all that information with the Tic Tac, the gimbal, and the Go Fast videos, it's just caused a big stir. And yes, there's an increase in people joining MUFON to become field investigators. There's people that are reporting now in more detail, paying attention. There's people coming forward, telling their stories for the first time now. They say, oh, well, we see it on TV. We hear people talking about it. So we've decided to come forward because it wasn't something that could be talked about 10 years ago, Yeah. So, yeah.
Now, for the majority of your investigations, you said that, a lot of it is explainable. I wonder how much is our own military and, how much it could be, I don't want to say a deception on the in the government media's part, but they don't have the best track record for telling the truth. So,
Right.
I can't really trust any of that stuff. I think the real disclosure comes from people investigating like yourself and the contactees and the abductees who have experienced this. But would you say that a lot of the sightings you're seeing is military?
I would say that we put a number together that 95% of stuff is explainable. It's the 4 to 5% that is not explainable. And that's what we're interested in, really. That's the stuff that we want. That's what we want to look into and find the similarities with. So yes, a lot of this stuff is our own government secret aircraft that's coming out of Area 51 or Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. All these secret military bases, because don't think, I know I've looked into DARPA. A lot of people don't know about DARPA. They now have drone killing drones. I mean, it's insane. And they hook them on the back of Humvees and then shoot these other drones up to go kill another drone. And it's insane, the stuff that the government and the intelligence field is capable of, and people don't even really know about it. So we find that a lot of people aren't also as educated with things that are flying in our skies today. So a lot of mishaps happen. I get tons of cases where it's a different planet at a different time that happens to just be shining during this 1 hour. And you look outside your door and you're like, that's never been there before, and you report it, and you're not familiar with astronomical stuff or the weather. I've had a lot of that. I've had people that sometimes when you take a photograph with a camera, the camera will burn the light that's actually being shown. Maybe it's a red or green light in the sky, but through that picture, it looks white. And people are like, well, what's this? So it's a bunch of different stuff. And yeah, a lot of it is explainable, like you're saying.
Do you think that we have basically reversed engineered technology from off-planet source, that we have extraterrestrial craft in our possession that we've been able to reproduce?
I would have to say, yeah. I mean, there's so much. I mean, if you really have looked at the evidence, went through documents, and you've been following this from Roswell, even before Roswell, there's stuff documented before the 1900s about the UFO phenomenon. I mean, there's just too much to it to believe that there's not something the government has that they're working with. We even know it today that whatever, like the iPhone 13 that's out today, for example, we know that the government and the military are 10 to 20 years ahead of that. You know what I mean? We're just getting around to it now, but they're way ahead of us, you know. And a lot of the times they can't come out and tell us because of intelligence reasons and reasons that could protect us from a war someday, you know. And if we let the public know now, our enemies, our adversaries know, you know, they know what we have. They're ready for it. So there's reasons that we do keep secrets, but there's some things that could be let out to be known. So yeah.
Now we talked a little bit about this. You work for MUFON's ERT, which is the Experiencer Resource Team. Talk a little bit about what's involved with that.
So yeah, it's definitely, you have to go through another set of training to become a member of the ERT. You got to read Bud Hopkins, you know, and you got to read Whitley Strieber, get very familiar with the experiencer process and what happens during different experiences, because not all of them are the same, you know, especially with UFO sightings, it's the same way. So basically what happens is they go on to MUFON.com, you know, they'll file a report. It gets assigned to one of the ERT members who will receive that case and make contact with the experiencer. And we basically, you know, set up a date for an interview. We stay in contact with them, and we help them walk them through the process, because most of the time when they're filling a report out, they're looking for answers. They have no idea why this is happening. Why me? You know, why are they coming to me? Why is this happening? And we walk them through in helping them find those answers. The ERT has medical doctors, we have therapists, we have all kinds of medical consultants. And then we also work with different offices that we can refer them to get further help. But our job is to basically be a counselor, which I've had 5 years experience with doing that. And we sit there and we listen, and we hear about everything, and we find similarities during our conversations, and we're able to point them out to them. And it's like a wow moment. They don't even realize they're telling you this, you know, but they tell a story this day and this day and wind up, you know, putting two and two together. And it's like, wow. And sometimes they need help doing that. And then most of the time what I'll do is, you know, we'll find a meeting that they can go to, and I'll go to their first meeting with them and assist them to walk them through, so they're comfortable. And we usually go to a meeting that has to do with their experience, so they can kind of learn more about it and understand why it's happening, or why it's happening to them, or what certain things mean through that experience. And then, you know, you stay in contact, and slowly before, you know, people will start understanding what happened to them. And it kind of, people need that help. You know, they need someone to go to, because the government's not doing it for you. They hear that, they want to put you in a loony bin, saying you're seeing stuff like that, you know. So MUFON's here to help people. That's our main goal. You know, we want to make sure people are okay and understand what's happening to them. So yeah.
Right on. There's been a lot of interesting studies lately on whether the amount of experiences are more positive than negative, like the CCRI Institute. And there's been a lot of people that I've interviewed myself that have started out terrified of the experience. And the more they learn about it, or they get regressed, it turns out to be a very positive and beautiful experience that actually helped them. For you, in your experience of interviewing contactees, do you find that most of the experiences are that they are mostly positive or mostly negative?
I would say it's a good mix, honestly. I'm an experiencer as well. I've had my own experiences, and you know, at first I was very, very unsure. I was scared. I'm not going to lie. I was freaked out by it. I wanted it to stop. But the more I looked into it, the more I figured out that it wasn't as bad as what I thought it was. And that's a part of, you know, doing the research and reaching out for help and finding somebody that knows what they're doing, and then they can help you with yours. And then you find those answers. And that's what I had to do. You know, I had someone remote view my situation, which really helped. You know, and then I kind of reached out on my own to my own experience and worked with it, and found out that it was just trying to show me something, you know. And that tends to happen a lot, but people are so unaware of what's going on, and they've never dealt with something that intense, or to even believe that this is real, you know, and it's coming at you so fast, so hard, that it freaks you out and you get scared. but really most of the time it can be a good thing. But then we also get those ones that are not. We get ones that people are, these things are leaving marks on people. They're putting implants in people. They're using them for hybridation programs, we hear. So I think it could be a big mix of stuff. I've helped people that have been in scary situations, that have attachments on them. I've had people that say, "Oh my God, I love the contact, but I don't know why they're here. Let's figure it out." So it's definitely a good mix of both.
Did you have your contact experience before or after you started working and investigating this stuff?
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Uh-huh.
I'm still working with mine. So, I thought it happened during, because they say a lot of times when you get into the field and you're peeling that onion back and you're getting so involved in it, it kind of puts your antenna up and lets people know that this guy's interested, let's go to him. So that's what I thought originally. I thought, I'm having this because, I'm in the field now. But I started looking back at my childhood and different things, and maybe it's not. Maybe I've always had this, I look at different things that happened throughout my life, and it's like, wow, I had that much good luck. Or is it something that's looking over me? Or, what about that feeling I always had in my stomach, that gut feeling telling me yes or no to do something? Sleepwalking when I was little. It only happened once or twice my entire life. Was it sleepwalking or was it something else? So those are the things that I'm trying to find out for myself. So,
Yeah. And, many experiencers and researchers and people that are involved with this that I speak to wholeheartedly believe that this is a phenomenon that really affects everybody. And it's just it's a matter of if you're remembering it or if you can recall it or if you're blocking these things out. But whatever these entities are, I think they have a great deal to do with the human race and everything about us. I think they have a great deal to do with who and what we are and our creation and where we're going. I don't know. What is your understanding of what these are at this point?
Well, I think that there's many different races, just like there's people here on Earth. So I think that there's good, there's bad, there's in between. There's ones that used to be good and now they're bad, same and the opposite. So I think with the different races, there's different reasons for them being here. And I think there's a good side and a bad side. And some are here because Earth is one of a kind. You know what I mean? We don't have too many Earth-like planets that are out in space. And I think they've most likely been here since the beginning of time. And I think some want to protect the Earth and protect the human race. And I think others want to harm it. So I think it's hard to just give you a straightforward answer with that question. That's a hard one. I don't really think there's a straightforward with that, but it's a bunch of possibilities.
Definitely so. And I think that there is a major connection between all of it, whether it's, even paranormal activity, ghosts, spirits, the afterlife, and these physical beings that come and actually take people. I think there is some kind of connection there, but I don't know what it is. I couldn't even begin to tell you. It's just like you said, a gut feeling that I get. You mentioned hybrids earlier. Is there a large percentage of people you worked with that claim to have had some kind of hybridization experiments going on with them?
I've had very few, but there has been a couple. They always know what planet they're from and where their real home is. They always say they've grown up their whole life having that feeling that they don't really belong, that they're really not really from here. They've always had that feeling. And they usually are experiencers as well, because they are hybrid. So they have, they can use part of their brain that we can't maybe per se. But I was just watching a show the other night about hybrids. And how you can really kind of figure out if a person is a hybrid. I'm not too familiar. I haven't really gotten too down that rabbit hole yet. I've been more helping people with their experiences and investigating sightings than going down that road yet, but I'm slowly starting to get there to understand it more. Last night, like I said, they were talking about how you can figure out if someone's a hybrid or not, the spacing between the eyes, the jawline. Different things like that, how big the actual skull of the head is, the size of the forehead, the color of the eyes, and how deep the eyes are. That's one thing that I found out. You know, the eyes are completely different, and when you look into the eyes, it's like there's a feeling with it. It's like a deep feeling, that like they're looking right inside of you. So there's a bunch of different things and aspects that go into figuring out what a hybrid is and who they are. So, but there's
Yeah.
not a lot of information on it yet, you know. So
Now, being in the field you're in, and especially you have a podcast as well, so you're able to talk to a lot of people like I do. And I found, I've been to a few UFO conferences. I've done this for years now, and I find it's really hard to discern from a lot of the information we're getting out there because, unfortunately, there's people that are intentionally out there to muddy the waters. There's people that are intentionally out there putting out misinformation and disinformation for whatever reason, whether they're told to do it or they just they think it's fun. So for me, it gets sometimes difficult to discern a lot of the information coming out of here, and you have to do a lot of vetting. And I think the main thing is going off my gut intuition with a lot of this stuff. But how is it for you? Do you find that there is a lot of misinformation going on out there?
So I'm a part of the UFO Twitter community.
Yeah.
And we know that there's so much there, man. We've been dealing with a lot of disinformation coming, a lot of people intentionally, putting bad information out there, not giving people the right way. They'll even take people under their wing and they'll show them the whole opposite of what's really going on. So yeah, there is a lot of bad information out there, and that's like your job, what you're doing right now, and me with my podcast and me taking people under my wing. I'm trying to give them the right information from the people that have been doing this for so long in the right field, the right way, and I try to put that out to the younger generation, which is who we really need to get a hold of with it, because they're the ones that are up and coming that are going to take over what we're doing,
Yeah.
So we got to make sure they get the right information. So there's a lot of it, man. And people, the government has lied since Roswell, 70, 75 plus years. So when you get people that come out of the government that get into ufology and they say, yeah, well, this is what's going on, I know, can you trust them? That's right. You know what I mean? They were a part of that government that lied to us for so long. But then there's also a lot of things that, some of them bring a lot of good information out, stuff that has never been done. Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon and Jim Semivan and Hal Puthoff. They've put out some great stuff. They've released all 3 videos. They made it into a mainstream thing. But then there's always that possibility. Is he an intelligence guy? Is he doing this purposely? Nobody knows for sure, but they get an extreme amount of credit for bringing it to the mainstream and getting the information out and getting more people involved in the field and actually bringing it to the attention of the politicians that are now passing bills to put this stuff in place. So they definitely put the foot on the pedal and it's taking off.
Yeah, it is, man. It is so interesting. A lot of things that are happening, but it's also on the other coin. It's kind of scary, some of the stuff you hear coming out just from different researchers, independent researchers. Like there's high-level members of Congress and the military that believe this is a demonic phenomenon.
Yes.
If you look at things like the Collins elite back in the day that completely came to a conclusion that this is demonic and we shouldn't be messing with it. Well, if you look at, from my point of view, if there's demons flying in the sky, I think we should at least investigate it.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be messing it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on all that?
So I know a big part of this is religion. A lot of people that are in office right now, they're a lot older, and back in their time, religion was what they did. They went to every Sunday they went to church. They got baptized. They went to, they went to see their preacher or father and told their sins. You know what I mean? That's how they lived. They prayed before they ate. So it was very, very religious based back in those days. So that carried over to what they do today. And a lot of them say it's the devil, I don't know how many times that I've been to UFO conferences and I've had, Christian or Catholics that come and they try to talk to us about it and say, this is the devil. This is not really what you think. And the same thing, like you said, happens in politics. But either way, there's stuff flying in our sky, like you said, that needs to be investigated. There's millions of people that fly every day in airplanes. If one of these things hit one of those airplanes and kills people, and it has happened before, it's even happened with a lot of military personnel and jets, it needs to be looked into. They're flying in airspace that is not supposed to be flying in. They're shutting our nuclear missiles down by a tap of a button. I mean, that shuts everything down. That's our complete security of the United States of America. And you're going to say this doesn't need to be investigated? It's nothing, just brush it off? No, this is an important topic.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, that brings us to you investigate the SCU, which is the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. What's involved with that?
So the SCU, they're very scientific based. MUFON is too. MUFON's main saying is, scientifically researching the UFO phenomenon to benefit humanity. And we do that, but we focus really on investigating the cases that are reported to us and working with experiencers. And the SCU kind of has brought on a lot of scientists on board, and they're trying to be more scientifically based than anything. And the cases that they'll take all reports, but the main ones they only investigate is that 5% that we talked about earlier. They really only want to look at the good stuff. Where MUFON, we take everything. So there is a big difference between the two, but with the scientific aspect, it's fairly interesting to have all these different scientists that come from all different fields, putting their input into the UFO phenomenon that really hasn't happened before like that. And if it has, it hasn't been out in the public. So, and this is a public group you can go be a part of. And why not? I mean, if you're into the UFO phenomenon, why not have your feet in everything? And that's what I try to do. I'm here to find answers and help people and get to the bottom of this. So that's why I'm a part of multiple different organizations. But they do a lot of scientific work. They put out some good research papers, and they're working on some stuff now. I'm just beginning with the SCU, so I don't know too much. But I'm starting to try to investigate for them. But that's all on hold right now with the SCU. They're trying to update their systems and stuff. So, but yeah, it's another good organization that's trying to find answers to the topic.
I find it hilarious that, over the past couple of years, now it's okay for scientists and academia to look at UFOs and stuff just because the government and our media start talking about it. So now it's okay. But before there was this huge stigma that they wouldn't touch that with a 20-foot pole. You wouldn't ever hear, mainstream scientists really looking seriously. They had a handful, but that was it.
That's
and
right.
Now I find it that, they're coming out of the woodwork to look at this stuff now, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you were a scientist and your whole life you learned about this science and you were taught something one way, but now you're finding, say you're in aerospace, and now you're seeing craft that can use gravity wells and just turn on an instant, that would interest you immediately. You want to know and get to the bottom of what this is. And with the scientists that are helping on our project, that's exactly what it is. They see these things that they were not all this years, they were taught a certain thing, and this is completely defying what they were taught in school. That would interest anybody,
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on places of concentrated high strangeness like Skinwalker Ranch, places like the Meadow, Blind Frog? There's a few others that have been discovered recently where there is actively people from these black projects or top secret military projects going out there to investigate this stuff because there's so much of it and it's undeniable. Like you have UFOs, ghosts, you have Bigfoots, you got all this weird stuff happening in these one areas. And, it makes me think, well, this is definitely connected in some way, but also it's more that they're investigating this and like putting it on the History Channel and,
Yeah, absolutely. Skinwalker Ranch. Bigelow. He owned it for a long time. He created NIDS, and he had his people out there that would basically be a dummy in a way and kind of be a part of the experiment. And then they would kind of learn that way. He would put people out on the ranch with one security guard to be out there for a whole week at a time. And, and he would try to catch all these on camera and do stuff like that to bring information back. And we see on TV now at Skinwalker Ranch, Bigelow doesn't own it anymore, but they're doing tests out there the same way. And we see different portals. We see UFOs. We see the Skinwalker itself, the werewolf thing. We see different things in infrared lights, and I mean lights in the sky that come from the mesa. It's incredible. And same thing with the meadow. The meadow is amazing. I had a couple of them people. One's coming up on my show, and I had the director of it on my podcast to talk about it there too. That place is extremely interesting. Yes, Trey Hudson. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's incredible, and more today in the field, we're finding out that the paranormal and Bigfoot and UFOs, they are all connected in some way. We're finding out that there's I've had cases where a family's out camping in the woods and they see these Bigfoot running at them, and then all of a sudden a craft in the sky shines a beam down and this Bigfoot disappears. So I believe personally that it's all connected in some way or another. And there's evidence for that now. So.
Oh yeah, there certainly is. And like we said earlier, it's like a never ending onion you can't peel.
Yep.
Now you're also a member of the Planetary Society.
Yes.
And advocate with Congress for future space missions and exploration. So how'd you get involved with this?
That's something I came across out of nowhere. And I was like, the Planetary Society, what is this? Of course I'm interested in space. That's how it all started in a way. And when I found out, I was like, man, I would really like to get a part of this. And it's $4. You become a member, you pay $4 a month. Send you a cool t-shirt, you get a magazine every month, and then they offer free certification classes once you're a member. I mean, like, not easy certifications either. I took my advocacy certification to become an advocate for the Planetary Society, and we work with Congress during the certain times of the year when they're trying to push for the budget to get increased, and that's a big part of future space exploration. And our advocates are all over the world, and different representatives in Congress, benefit from having budgets pushed for space exploration. Some of them are a part of the space program. So those are the ones you really want to seek out and talk to and push them to, fight for different projects that are going on. One of the big projects the Planetary Society had, Project Light Sail. It was a solar light sail and it could do different readings and stuff like that. It's crazy, and it's the biggest civilian organization for space exploration on the planet. And they're always putting new papers out. People are joining left and right. I'm about to finish up a certification in digital imaging, which will help in the UFO field as well. So I mean, it's great. I absolutely love it, and to be able to work with your own congressmen and women, in person, and to be able to push different budgets and get them increased and different projects pushed. It's great. It's the way to be involved and be an advocate for society in general.
Yeah, for sure, because there are very little mainstream government institutions that I fully trust, and
Right.
one of those, unfortunately, is NASA. I don't trust a majority of this stuff coming from them, so we definitely need more independent researchers like yourself, more people who aren't involved with academia, mainstream academia and science, who are doing their independent research to find out what is really going on out there, because I think there's a lot of variance between what is reality and what we're being told by NASA. And that's a whole different show, but
Yeah, well, I was actually pretty impressed last year. The administrator of NASA came forward after the report was given out, and him and a bunch of scientists were going to their main people and telling them, hey, we want to be involved. We want you to hand over the UFO documentation that you have so we can put our efforts in and actually find answers to what's going on. It was the first time that NASA, scientists came forward and actually gave pushback, which was really cool. To hear that they want a piece of it. You're talking about you can't find answers, yet you're leaving NASA out of it. They want a piece too, It's the same thing with like the SCU and the scientists in MUFON. They want to know.
Well, where do you think this is all going? Do you think within our lifetime that we're going to have definitive knowledge as a planet that we're not alone, and it's going to be an accepted thing, and maybe even have a closer understanding and even contact with these entities?
So there's been a big conversation that a lot of people feel that that something's going to happen, something big is coming, which is why the government has put out the reports and pushed for different bills, and we're getting sightings and videos released from the military that they're preparing us, because they know that there's something that's going to happen. It's inevitable and they can't stop it. So they have to slowly prepare the public. Now, do I believe that? Yes and no. I hope in my lifetime that it happens, but if it doesn't happen in my lifetime, it'll be my children's lifetime. I hope, I would think. At the rate that it's going now, the way things are coming, I mean, every year new stuff's coming out. Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, they're all still working towards stuff. So we have a lot to look forward to still. We're supposed to get another UAP report from Congress soon, or from the government. So I do believe that within, the end of my generation towards my children's, that we'll have something. We will know what's going on. I mean, really, if you look into the information, we already know now. It's just the fact that we need the government to come out and say, hey, yes, this is what's happening. It's people like you and people like me and every other podcast host out there and that has shows that are bringing disclosure to people. We the people will bring disclosure, and that's how it will happen. The government's not going to bring that for us. All we're waiting for from them is confirmation. Real researchers know that this has happened. It's real, and it's happening now. It's been happening for a very long time. So we're just waiting for that. Yes.
Yes, right on. All right, that was excellent, man. Before you head out tonight, tell us about your UFO Encounters Worldwide podcast.
Yeah, so UFO Encounters Worldwide is my weekly podcast. We actually just hit #1 on the top 100 science fiction charts today, actually. And we will also be on KGRA digital broadcasting radio starting March 16th. And you can also find us on all major podcast platforms. Every Thursday, I put out a new episode from all types of researchers, investigators, experiencers that are in the field that have been for a very long time, to get the information from them why we can, so we can get it out to the public. And you can also check out the website for the podcast as well. It's UFOEncounters.wordpress.com. And I write new articles on there, bring cases to the light that really haven't had the right time to shine, and some really good information if you're getting into the field. Every Thursday.
Awesome. Jesse, thank you so much. That was fantastic information. And I'll definitely love to talk to you again sometime in the near future here.
Absolutely. I'd be honored to come back on. And thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. Great conversation, too.
Oh, yes, it was great. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll be talking again tomorrow.